When entering into an individual voluntary agreement, a lack of trust and communication between insolvency practitioners and creditors can lead to poor outcomes for both parties, not to mention the customer. But Visionblue Solutions' ability to share full case data securely and in real time is encouraging a more partnership-like approach. Here's our reporter with more.
First Stop Group in Blackpool helps people with mixed credit histories get finance. Making sure loans are affordable is an important part of the application process, but a small number of customers still end up in difficulty. Here we see a typical customer profile.
Yes, this is a new case that we've received through the system from an insolvency practice.
When a customer applies for an individual voluntary arrangement or IVA, it can be difficult for creditors to access information quickly. First Stop is trialling a software platform used by insolvency practitioners to manage 70% of IVA appointments.
I can see all the information that is being keyed in a live environment. I can see the creditor list starting to build up, so I can start to understand the other lenders that are involved with this customer.
And traditionally this would all be done, what, on paper?
It would, yes. So typically the journey or the experience from our side is when a client engages in insolvency practice, we would then put the account on hold for maybe 90 days, and we would then ultimately receive a paper-based update of the client's circumstances and a request to vote of whether we're happy to accept the proposal. For the first time, we have an insight into that first 90 days to what is actually happening with the customer and with the insolvency practitioner.
Visionblue Solutions software digitises the IVA process from start to finish.
The IP is opening up their books to the creditors. The secure transfer of electronic information replaces the paper-based process, and that's not just great for the immediacy of information and the scope of information that's transferred between the parties, but it also cuts down on costs because you don't have paper printing costs, you don't have postage costs, and that then those fees are saved and are actually fed back into the case and go out to the creditors as distributions.
Adam Deering uses Visionblue to manage his insolvency business. He says if creditors can access information earlier, it helps them to have a more rounded view of an individual's circumstances when they vote on their IVA application. So an IVA, by its very nature, is an individual voluntary arrangement. Let's take a look at the case of Mrs. Brown here.
Yeah, so Mrs. Brown came to Hanover Insolvency. She'd had a drastic change of circumstances in a marriage breakdown. She was left to pay the mortgage on her own. Mrs. Brown accumulated £20,000 worth of debt. We proposed an IVA to her creditors on this basis. That was unfortunately declined because she had £30,000 worth of equity in the property. Now, a property isn't a very liquid asset. By the time she'd have sold that, paid estate agent fees, paid the cost of moving, the monies gained wouldn't have cleared the debts.
Now, if the creditors had access to that additional information, do you think their response to the IVA request would have been different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the problem for Mrs. Brown in the current climate is that the creditors take a bit of a broad brush approach.
And this software platform gives creditors that capability to see the whole picture?
Yeah, absolutely. We update the information on the software digitally. They can log in at any time, they can view each customer account.
It's the evidencing and understanding of where that client is up to. Often we'll receive a variation notice. It's transparent and it's shared and it's live data. And again, it helps us to be much more empathetic in our decision towards that IVA.
When we go out and we speak to the creditors, whether it's the high street banks, the utilities, debt purchasers, they all want more transparency. They want to be able to see exactly what the fee makeup of the case is, exactly what charges are being associated to the case, what other creditors are on that case, how much are they owed at all points in time. We've designed the platform to make their life much easier, and not just easier, but allowing them to adhere to the standards that they're required to.
By providing creditors with a more informed position, Visionblue's software gives peace of mind to everyone involved in the IVA process. That's not just good news for creditors and insolvency practitioners, but gives customers like Mrs. Brown a better chance of completing their IVA journey and emerging debt-free.